Can a love so pure exist that it breaks even the walls built in God's name? It's a question that unsettles both faith and reason. For centuries, humanity has built religions as bridges to the divine. Yet paradoxically, it's love that often shatters those very boundaries. Shams Tabreez, the elusive mystic who transformed Rumi's life, proposed an idea that remains radical even today. True love transcends all belief systems. It dissolves not only prejudice, but the very identity that clings to my religion or your religion. In neuroscience, this state resembles ego dissolution, a momentary suspension of self-boundaries, where distinctions between us and them lose their emotional grip. Such states often lead to increased empathy, unity, and peace. Shams's notion of love was not rebellion against religion. It was a return to the inner state from which all religion originally emerged, the direct, unmediated experience of divine unity. Despite the world's deep religiosity, humanity is increasingly anxious, divided, and intolerant. We have more access to scripture than ever, yet less access to inner stillness. Part of the problem lies in identity fusion theory. When a person's group identity fuses with personal identity, they begin defending beliefs as though defending their own body. Criticism of one's religion feels like a personal attack. Studies show that the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center, activates more strongly when people evaluate members of an outgroup. Meanwhile, regions associated with empathy and moral reasoning become less active. The result is emotional rigidity, tribal loyalty, and moral disconnection. This explains why religious affiliation meant to unify can paradoxically deepen separation. The more rigidly one clings to form, the less one perceives the essence. Shams Tabreez recognized this centuries ago. He saw religion transforming from a vehicle of awakening into a cage of imitation. His insight was daring. When love becomes real, religion becomes invisible. Shams Tabreez was a 13th century Persian mystic, remembered less for his writings and more for the seismic effect he had on others, especially Rumi, who transformed from a scholar of law into a poet of divine ecstasy. Shams dismantled superficial piety. He exposed how people worshipped their own certainty rather than God. For him, love was not emotional affection, but existential fire, the process through which the false self is burned away so that truth may emerge. He taught that religion is a means, not an end. Once the destination union with the divine's reached, the vehicle is no longer needed. In cognitive terms, Shams invited seekers to shift from conceptual knowledge to existential knowing. Modern cognitive science echoes this distinction. Propositional knowledge belongs to the intellect, but transformation requires embodied cognition when understanding becomes lived reality. Shams was not destroying religion. He was reviving its living core. Shams once said, "The path of love begins when the self ends." In psychological language, this points toward ego transcendence, a state where the mind's habitual self-referencing quiets. Studies on meditation and awe show that the brain's default mode network, responsible for self-talk and autobiographical memory, temporarily deactivates during deep contemplative states. The result is greater empathy and reduced narcissistic processing. When one is deeply moved by beauty, art, or compassion, the boundary of me softens. This experience mirrors Shams's description of divine love, where the self dissolves into awareness itself. To Shams, the first requirement of divine love was this annihilation not of the body or mind, but of ownership, the need to possess, define, and separate. Shams taught that when the heart is purified, duality dissolves. Every face becomes the mirror of the beloved. In psychology, repeated focus on certain values changes what we perceive. If one trains the mind to value unity and compassion, perception reorganizes accordingly. The brain doesn't see reality directly, but predicts it based on inner models. Change the model, and the experience of reality changes. Shams's statement, "I see God in every face," was not metaphorical light, was perceptual transformation. His inner model no longer processed difference as threat, but as diversity within one being. Divine love is thus a radical cognitive perception to align with unity rather than separation. One of Shams's most misunderstood ideas is that love is not a feeling, it's a discipline. Emotional maturity is measured not by the intensity of emotion, but by emotional regulation, the ability to align actions with principles, even when feelings fluctuate. Shams's version of love followed the same logic. For him, divine love was the law of coherence when thought, feeling, and behavior align with truth rather than comfort. He compared emotional dependency to a candle flickering in wind, unstable and reactive. True love, by contrast, burns with stillness. It remains constant even in pain or misunderstanding. This mirrors the highest stage of moral development, where ethical behavior arises from internalized principles rather than external approval. Acts of compassion without emotional reward are, in Shams's framework, the highest form of divine obedience. Shams claimed that love is the cognitive bridge between creation and creator. This view aligns with modern theories of consciousness, where awareness deepens as systems achieve greater integration across parts. Similarly, Shams saw love as the integration of all levels of being, body, emotion, intellect, and spirit into one unified awareness. Love was intelligence resonating perfectly with the structure of reality. He opposed the false dichotomy between reason and devotion. Reason purified by love becomes illumination, and love guided by reason becomes stability. Divine love is not anti-intellectual emotion, but higher cognition, a form of knowing, in which the knower and the known merge into one conscious act. It's easy to misinterpret Shams's message as a reference toward religion. In truth, he was targeting possession of religion, not its spirit. When love becomes total, categories like Muslim, Christian, or Jew lose their psychological weight. They remain as linguistic identities, but not existential ones. Every religion begins as revelation and ends as organization. Revelation is living experience. Organization is its fossil. Love reverses the fossilization, it repersonalizes what became impersonal. In psychological terms, Shams's framework integrates intuitive and analytical reasoning. Mature spirituality does not suppress emotion or intellect, synchronizes them. When that harmony occurs, one's relationship with faith changes. Dogma becomes dynamic understanding. The believer becomes a seeker again. Shams summarized this transformation in one line: love is not against religion. It is against imitation. How can this philosophy guide our modern lives, often defined by digital outrage, polarization, and ideological rigidity? Begin by noticing when belief turns into superiority. The moment you feel morally above another, pause. This practice activates metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe thought without identification. Research shows that meta-awareness reduces dogmatism and emotional reactivity. Engage consciously with someone whose beliefs challenge your own. Instead of defending, Listen for their sincerity. Notice the subtle contraction in the body, the instinctive tightening of the ego's boundary. Empathy training increases gray matter density in the anterior insula, the region involved in compassion and perspective-taking. Practice fairness, forgiveness, and generosity even when unreciprocated. These behaviors train the nervous system toward compassion, resilience, stable capacity to act ethically without burnout. Consistent compassionate action rewires brain circuits toward patience and emotional balance. On a societal level, such practices generate what neuroscientists term intergroup neural empathy, physiological rewiring that makes compassion across religious or cultural boundaries feel natural rather than effortful. The philosophy of Shams becomes not mystical nostalgia, but a practical neuroscience of unity. Shams Tabreez's message was never anti-religion, it was pre-religion. A return to the original human capacity for direct divine connection. Love that breaks all religions does so by breaking the illusion of separation between human and human, between human and God. It represents a movement from identity defense to identity transcendence. It replaces competition of truths with participation in truth. When the heart is purified of ownership, truth no longer needs a label. The seeker no longer says, "My God" or "Your God," but simply rests in the awareness of the God, the source from which all paths emerge. Shams describes such a person as a lover of the one who made all paths. This is the highest intelligence, the consciousness that no longer divides to understand, but understands to unite. Religion divides minds. Love integrates consciousness. Asterisk.